Hello, CAT aspirants. How have you been? Welcome to SuperGrads, and I am your English mentor, Sana ma'am. Now, CAT has gone, and it was a heartache to many, while, of course, many could ace the exam. So, I'm sure there are a host of students who are actually scrambling to get to the right institutions, right? And don't you lose hope. There are many, many options still available. And today we are here to explore such an option, which is TISS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. So we've already made a detailed video on TISS and it is available on our YouTube channel. It was taken up by Neelam, so kindly refer to it in case you want to know the details about the institute, the programs it offers, right? And the packages and ROI and different other nuances have been well covered, right? So what am I here for today? I am here to guide you to how can you crack the English section of TISS exam. Now, let me tell you that so far, TISS used to have its independent exam, that is TISSNet. But this year onwards, it has collaborated with CUET PG exam. And since the pattern has changed, it's the first time, so many students were requesting us to come up with a detailed video. Right? So today, what am I going to cover? Let's have a quick look at the key deliverables of the session today. So not just am I going to tell you about the syllabus of the English Comprehension section, right, of CUET PG, we of course would also be taking up a couple of sample questions. I will also be giving you some amazing preparation tips and of course some reference books. Right? So are you ready? Let's begin. First of all, coming to the pattern and paper code for TISS MBA. Of course, as I've already told you, it is under CUET PG exam and the code is COQP12. There's another one also, COQP11, but the management related programs of TISS, right, are under this particular code. Any which way doesn't matter because even in P11, the English pattern remains the same. So we don't really care whether it's 12 or 11, whichever you are applying for, right? You just have to bother about the English syllabus. The pattern is that there will be 75 MCQ questions and what all subjects would be included in this? English comprehension, maths quantitative ability, data interpretation, and logical reasoning. Now, the plight of the students is that, there is no demarcation, there are no PYPs or previous year papers available, right? We don't even know what is going to be the weightage of English. Definitely, we don't know anything about the difficulty level. So when you don't have such defined precedents, there's a lot of confusion among the student community, and that is why we are here to help you out, right? Let me tell you that we definitely cannot come up with an exact number of questions, but English should have a substantial weightage, right? So you can expect minimum 15 questions in the English section. Roughly, that's again an estimation, of course, right? It can go up to maybe 25 or depends on the whims and fancies of the examiner. But then we have to be thoroughly prepared with the English section. And if you have been preparing for CAT and other parallel exams, then this particular exam should be a walk in the park. Yes, because the level of difficulty that we expect for this paper would be easy to moderate. So let's have a quick look at what exactly is the English section going to have. Now, this is really important. This is the syllabus. And you will soon realize that when you are preparing for CAT and even ZAT, of course, our focus used to be on passages, right? And of course, on Jumbles and a couple of questions here and there. But very few students focus on grammar in their course of preparation. So this is the right time where you're supposed to pull up your socks and prepare a bit on grammar. And it's not going to be difficult, trust me, if your basics are intact. So let's have a quick look at these topics. English grammar, English usage errors. So when I say English grammar, obviously Sentence correction and sentence improvement is a part of it. The format of the question may change. There can be a couple of different formats when they're testing you on your English grammar. But then, as long as the errors that are commonly asked in questions, if you know them, if your concepts and fundamentals are in place, you don't really have to worry. Jumbles, of course, because we've had a lot of practice on Jumbles. And don't you worry, I am going to take up a sample question of each of them. So even if you don't know any of the topics, you'll get all the clarity that you need. Reading comprehension, again, we expect a moderate level. Completion, one-word substitution, synonyms, antonyms, idioms, and phrases. So let's dive into the sample questions. But before that, let me tell you some reference books. Okay. So now these are some nice books that can help you. As such, I believe the SuperGrads material is amazing. It is, of course, one of the best materials that you can lay your hands on. But still, if you don't have access to it, these are the books that you can bank upon. VNRC for CAT by Arun Sharma. But it comes with a disclaimer that here you don't really have to worry much about the LOD3 exercises. See, the exercises in Arun Sharma are actually in different levels of difficulty. So level of difficulty 1 and 2 should be enough for this exam. You don't really need to rack your brains for LOD3. Okay? The complete reference manual for CMAT by Arihant publication is another nice book. And of course, CMAT level of preparation should help you in your CUET PG exam as well, because I believe they are very parallel in terms of the syllabus that they cover and the kind of questions that they ask. So this should do the trick. Well, if you really feel that you need a lot of work to be done in grammar, then of course, Renan Martin is the best book. Fine. However, if you follow this book, which is English is Easy by Chetan Anand. It covers grammar very methodically. It emphasizes a lot on the common errors that appear, right? And there are a couple of error spotting questions. So in Renan Martin, while you most of the time only have fill in the blanks, you don't have enough MCQs. In this book, you do have those questions, right? And the coverage is also very detailed. But at the same time, it is not very difficult to understand. It is not loaded with jargons. Another reason why I'm recommending this book is because it is very good for the beginners. There's a section here which is World of Words. There's a chapter. And for beginners who are not good at vocab, they can go through it. Otherwise, for vocabulary, there are many other books that you can follow. Word Power Made Easy is one of them. But as we say, the exam is around the corner. So it would be best if you already have a decent command over vocabulary. If you don't have, you can definitely consider any of these books. Even Arun Sharma has some amazing root words and lists of high frequency words. So in such a small amount of time that you have, your very limited span of time with you, so you can definitely go through these lists. They would be beneficial. Having said that, there's an additional book in case you want to practice. You can also pick up Pearson Publications, right? VNRC for CAT by Nishit Sinha. Okay, but I would say this is optional. This is for additional practice. That's it. If you cover these books, especially these two, I think you're good to go. So I am sure that you are eager to see some sample questions. I'm reiterating the fact that these are not official sample questions, but we have curated these questions for you, considering all the experience that we have, right? So we have come up with a question or two on each and every question type. Be with me till the end. Keep solving the questions. I will give you some very invaluable insights into each and every question type. So stay tuned till the end. All right. Coming to this particular question, this is one word substitution. Okay. So whenever we talk about one word substitution, it's just a question type. It's testing your vocabulary, and they would give you a phrase and you have to Find one word that encapsulates the essence of that phrase, right? That one word that can stand for that entire phrase or group of words. Simple enough. So the only prerequisite is that you need to have a good vocabulary. That's it. You can find ample of one word substitution exercises online, right? And even in some of the standard books. So, this is a question, a story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a deeper meaning, typically a moral or political one. What would that be? Most of the time, it is a story or a picture, right? Which would have a deeper meaning. What do you think should be the answer? Yes, the answer is allegory. It's an allegory. Because in an allegory, mostly it's a story, mostly it's a narrative, and in that there are some characters, and these fictional characters, they most of the time have some or the other symbolism associated with it. A wonderful example of allegory was Animal Farm by George Orwell. It was a story of animals in an animal farm, but it was much more than that, right? It depicted the rise and fall of communism. Okay, so I hope you understand allegory better with an example. Axiom, of course, is a kind of a truism or a kind of a statement that's known to be true. A cliffhanger would be most of the time a kind of a suspense, right? You're as if you're sitting on the edge of your seat. A climax which involves a lot of suspense before it is resolved, of course. Epic, we all know about an epic, a long poem or something, but it is not the right answer because it's direct, it's mostly a heroic poem, okay? While in allegory, there's a lot of symbolism involved, and the characters stand for much deeper values, they represent much more than they themselves are. A few more questions. An introduction that comes before something we say, all right. Now, this one is really easy. I am hopeful that you would know the answer. And the answer is, what is it? Prologue. It's very easy to understand once you understand the etymology of the words. Root words help you in so many ways. So, of course, prologue comes from the root pre plus log. And do you know that log with a C or G or Q actually means to speak? And pre means before, right? So prologue, something which is said before something starts. Okay, so most of the time in novels or even in plays, you find something is being said or written before the main part starts. Something like a preface, and that is a prologue. What is a premonition? Premonition is a kind of an inkling that you have, a kind of omen that you have before something is going to happen. आप जब सेंस कर लेते हो कि कुछ होने वाला है, most of the time कुछ बुरा होने वाला है, that is a premonition. Prediction, of course, we know prediction, forecasting something. Monologue is speaking to yourself, or rather, in fact, to be specific, when only one person is doing the talking, that is monologue. Again, this also comes from the same root. Fine. The next question. A steep or almost upright side of a high rock, mountain, or cliff. What should that be? Okay, well, is it nadir or zenith? It's precipice. It's a kind of a very steep rock, something like this, okay? Very sharp, almost upright. Well, zenith might have confused you. Zenith is the highest point of something. It's like a peak. It's like a pinnacle, right? But you've got to understand that they're specifically asking you about a high rock or cliff. Abyss is like a bottomless chasm, something which is absolutely at the bottom, right, deep down there. Nadir is the lowest point. Nadir is the opposite of zenith. But here, of course, precipice is the right answer. Next question. Select synonym of the given word. Now, sometimes synonym can be asked like this in this form, where a word is randomly given to you. The best part of this is either you know the word or you don't know the word. So what I really like about vocabulary questions is that they don't waste your time. है ना? Either you know it or you don't know it. You can't really sit down and think and do something about it. But here, you would be luckier if you get such questions. Because here, the word is used in a sentence. Here, definitely you can guess, you can speculate, right? You can come somewhere near to the answer, but not here. So, what is an epistle? Epistle is actually a letter. It could even mean a normal letter which is written, or it could mean letters which are written. A literary work which is presented in the form of letters. So it could mean that as well. Well, numismatist is somebody who collects coins. Stultify is when you confuse someone as if they are completely confounded. Okay. Next question. A range of industrial and investment commitments were made by the leaders to assuage public concern and win votes. So, looking at the sentence, you can figure out that what is happening here. So many commitments were made by the leaders. Why? Because public was concerned and they wanted to win votes. So they were actually trying to woo the public, right? They were trying to calm them down. They were trying to appease them. Fine. And assuage would therefore mean something like comforting the anxiety or concerns of someone. What can be the answer? Alleviate. Can we have some synonyms, please? Absolutely. Mollify is to soothe, right? Ameliorate is to make better. Placate is to calm someone down. Appease is also to make them happy. Nice, yeah? So if you learn words in clusters like this, you would be better at it. You would be sharper, right? Okay. So, of course, an alleviate is, of course, a synonym. Accentuate would not fit in the bill. Aggravate is to worsen something. And force also is absolutely opposite of what is expected here. The next question type, select antonym of the given word. Disheveled. What do you mean by disheveled? Remember, antonym is being asked. बच्चे कभी कभी confuse हो जाते हैं, synonym पूछा जा रहा है, antonym mark कर देंगे and vice versa. Don't do that. Read the directions very carefully. All right. So here, disheveled is when something is very untidy, right? Especially your hair, your clothes, they're soiled, they are unkempt. That is disheveled. We have to select an antonym. So antonym would be tidy. The opposite. Clumsy and unkempt. Something which is not neat, which is not dapper. Exasperated is a very different word when you are really irritated and vexed and annoyed. Look at this. While the reaction to major disasters is dismal, the response to emergencies like accidents is equally sad. So a sentence is there and a word has been used and you have to figure out the meaning of the word. Rather, you have to mark the antonym. So it says that reaction to major disasters is dismal. The response to emergencies like accidents is equally sad. So when you look at this equally sad, you can infer that even dismal has got something to do with something which is sad and disappointing, which is not up to the mark. And that is what dismal means. Right? It is something which is very disappointing. Dismal performance by our sportsmen. Matlab, very unfortunate and very sad and disappointing. We have to pick an antonym. What should that be? Bataiye. Of course, competent. Because depressing and upset would be the meaning of dismal. Smiling is irrelevant here. Now, there was one thing given which was English usage. Now, when I say English usage or correct usage, either it can be grammatical or it can be semantic. So what do I mean by semantic? I mean word usage. And I'm introducing this question type to you because this is really important. You find ample of such questions in Arun Sharma, so you can practice them and you can expect such questions. So what happens? They're only testing you on your ability to use words, whether you can use the words correctly or not. So a same word is used in 4 different sentences, right? And you have to pick up the one sentence where it is used incorrectly or inappropriately. So let's have a look. Let's quickly read them. To catch the terrorist, the security forces formed a ring around the house where he was hiding. Okay. So this looks good to me. So far, we don't even know which is the word which is being tested, right? So we'll have to see that word has to be common in all the sentences. Now let's have a look at option B. They were all soaking wet and their mother told them to wring their clothes first and then put them out to dry. This looks absurd. Wring their clothes? What would that mean? I think probably they are trying to say wring their clothes. This is the word which should have been here. Wringing is, nichodna jo hum karte hain, right? We try to drain all the water out of clothes through our hand movements, twisting them, right? This is what is to wring. Okay, fine. So coming to the next one, the witch waved her wand, recited a magical verse, pressed the blue stone on her ring and vanished into thin air. So of course it's the normal ring that we're talking about. Here the ring meant ring where people actually form a circle. Fine, they try to corner someone or they try to defend someone by making a circle. Here the word should have been this. So this probably is the wrong usage and should be the answer, but we're checking other options as well. Here the ring means the ring, the ornament, and here she had left home for the first time, so her parents made a promise that she would ring them up every day. So here ringing is calling them up or telephoning them, right? Simple. So all the options A, C, and D are the correct usage of the word ring. B has a problem, so it will be our answer. So wasn't this an interesting question type? I hope you enjoyed this. Okay, next one. Grammar. Now, call it sentence improvement or sentence correction or error spotting, whatever you call it. The formats can be multiple. Sometimes they can simply give you 4 sentences, A, B, C, D. Now, all those 4 sentences can be independent sentences. And they ask you how many of them are correct. And the options could be like only A. Option B could be A and B. Option C could be only B. So there can be multiple formats of questions. But you don't have to worry about it. Rest assured, if you know your fundamentals, if you understand grammar really well, please don't be perplexed by the question type. Errors would stay the same, right? So let's do this question. Centuries of servility has been making him submissive and passive, incapable of any resentment or revolt. So this is a typical sentence improvement questions where a part is underlined or highlighted and you have to replace this with any of the options given. Fine. So what do you think should be the right answer? Has been making him. Okay, have made him, has made him, all right, has been made him. Now, this is the murder of grammar. This does not fall under any tense. Even like we can keep this optional also. It's absolutely fine. Has been making. So we don't really need a perfect continuous tense here, right? And we've got to understand that centuries of servility, being like a servant, acting like a servant, had, it has made him very, very submissive and passive. Fine. So should it be have made him or should it be has made him? Option A is anyway out of the game. It doesn't even have him here. And apart from that, we don't really need a perfect continuous tense. So looking at B and C, you've got to understand this is a problem of subject-verb agreement. Do you understand that? You've got to identify what is my subject. Your subject is centuries of servility, no doubt. But then this is a noun phrase. You'll have to identify the head noun. What is that main thing? What is that main subject which is impacting or which is actually leading to the verb? So it's not centuries. The focal point here is servility. Servility has actually made him like that because he's acted like a serf. So that is the reason why he's become very passive and submissive. So keeping that in mind, servility would be our head noun. जिसके हिसाब से we have to choose the verb, and so servility is of course an uncountable noun. It should be treated like a singular subject. So a singular subject would take a singular verb. We already know that, and so it should be has. Has made him. That's our right answer. Hope that is clear. Another format, find the erroneous part. Now a question can come like that also, where you just have to figure out which part has an error. So let's have a look at this question. To perform this experiment, drop little sugar into a glass of water. If you think there is no error, you will be marking the delta. Otherwise, you have all these parts mentioned in the options. This part looks problematic, and so B beta should be the answer. The question is why? What's wrong with this particular part? Well, it should be drop a little sugar. Yes, even determiners, A missing there, or A instead of the, or vice versa, can create havoc. Okay, this is a very neglected topic, but please be clear with articles as well. Okay, coming to this, why should it be a little? Because you've got to understand that little is different from a little. The moment we say little, we actually mean very less quantity in a very small amount, almost nothing. When I say there's little food, we'll have to order something. Little food means we have almost nothing to eat, right? But the moment I say a little, it means there is some amount, though it's not enough. So definitely a little means there is something. Probably a person can have, their meal out of it. A little food that we have can suffice only one person, but the rest of us will have to fend something for ourselves. So when we say a little, there is something, though it might not be enough. It's not surplus, it's not ample amount. But the moment we say little, it means nothing almost, right? So here, drop little sugar. Nahin, we are performing an experiment. We will have to add some sugar, right? So a little would make sense. Hence, the correction is in part B. Is this clear? Now we come to parajumbles. Parajumbles are also called sentence rearrangement. So here we have around 4 sentences that are jumbled up. They are in no set order. Obviously, what is our task at hand? We have to arrange them to form a logical sequence. And parajumbles are really fun. I promise you, they're really nice, interesting, but at the same time, very challenging. So if you really like a novel, like an amateur, sit down and just start reading them without any strategies and just try arranging them. This is not going to help you much. This will not take you too far, right? Your accuracy will get affected and you will end up using much more time than required. So what are the tricks? I'll tell you in a nutshell, as I promised you that I would be giving you some nice preparation tips. So I'm telling you about parajumbles. What should be the right approach? Well, try figuring out the opener, the starting sentence. That's very important. Bank a lot on the options. You will get options. Please utilize the options, right? And above everything else, try figuring out a mandatory pair. A pair that you think is compulsory, right? If you think A should precede C, or if you think C should follow A, that means AC should be a part of the sequence, then you have to have some logical reasons why you think so. So we will work this out. I don't have that much time. I'm not here to teach you parajumbles right now. So let's solve this. Find a quick cursory look at the option tells us that either my opener is going to be A, or it can be B, or it can be D. So let's start with reading A. Liberal principles include, among others, limited government under the rule of law with individual rights enforceable against the government. So this is basically introducing the concept of liberal principles. That is what liberal principles actually are. So what they are: limited government under the rule of law. Fine. Individual rights should be upheld. Fine. So government rule should not be very strong, should not be very authoritative. In fact, it should be lenient, it should be liberal, and the individual rights should be enforceable. So A looks like a very good opener because it introduces the subject or the topic of discussion. This looks like a perfect opener. Let's have a look at other options. B says, but it cannot be denied that. does not look like an ideal opener because it starts with but. ऐसा नहीं है कि but से start हो रहा है, and से start हो रहा है, तो कभी वो opener हो ही नहीं सकता. ऐसा नहीं है. That's an exception. But ideally, when you have a better option, why go for that? So why do we read so often? I like to highlight the keywords. They will help me in framing mandatory pairs. Fine. So B says, but it cannot be denied that political societies based on liberal principles have been more successful on almost any measure than regimes that are more authoritarian, communitarian, or sectarian. So what does this say? That we will have to admit, it cannot be denied that societies based on liberal principles have been more successful than dictatorships, right? Than authoritarian or sectarian regimes. Fine. So this, we've understood this, but we also have to understand that it starts with but. So there should be something contrasting because but marks a contrast or an inflection in the ideas. So we'll hold this as of now. C says, so why do we read so often today that liberalism is in crisis, failing, or already dead? This is in the question form. And you look at so. So, therefore, that's why, hence, they often mark cause-effect relationship. So it's highlighting a causal relationship, right? Let's come to the last one. Liberal societies have not always lived up to these principles. Look at this word, these. This is a demonstrative here. These principles, when you say these principles, what is expected? You should be talking about the principles prior to the statement. Can you think of some kind of a mapping here? Can't you? This talks of principles, and which principles are mentioned in A? Don't you think that there should be A and then there should be D? AD makes a mandatory pair according to me. Don't you agree? So we decide that it should start with A, then it should be D, and we get our answer. But anyway, to explain you so that we make full sense out of this discussion, I will be explaining you the entire sequence. So first of all, it tells you about what liberal principles are, right? Next, it tells you that liberal societies have not fully been able to actually administer these principles, have not lived up to these principles 100%, right? But then comes B, but despite that, they're still better off than monarchies, they're still better off than authoritarian regimes. So hence, we then have B beta, right? And eventually C says, so why do we say that liberalism is in crisis? Cause-effect relationship. B should be followed by C. Because C says, फिर हम क्यों कहते हैं कि ये अच्छा नहीं है? When it's still better than any other system available, then why do we blame the liberal societies? Why do we say that they are failing or they are in crisis? So this makes complete sequence. I hope you understood this. For more practice, you can turn to Arun Sharma. It has amazing para jumbles. All right. And even the other books that I recommended have ample of practice questions on para jumbles. Para completion. See, para jumbles and para completion are really very challenging questions, and they often baffle students a lot. So what happens here typically is that a paragraph is given to you, right? And there's a blank. Now that blank can be at the end, it can be somewhere in the middle. In our case, it's in the beginning. And this blank would have a complete idea or a complete sentence. So we have to pick the right one. So a tip for this would be, please understand the logical flow of ideas. And also keep in mind what is the theme of the passage and what is the general tone. That way you will be able to figure out what is the best choice. You cannot include anything randomly on the basis of your whims and fancies. कि ये भी आ सकता है, वो भी आ सकता है. No, we'll not be doing that. Reason being that for incorporating anything in a paragraph, you need a logical precedent. You need a reason why you are picking up this particular option. So we'll have to understand that what is the flow of ideas. We want to make the flow very continuous. And maximum weightage goes to the adjacent idea, the closest idea to the blank, right? So we'll have this discussion here that this is the blank, and then let's read Mostly it comes down to good people skills. So a very pertinent question is, what does it stand for? Right? What is this talking about? That means we are defining something. Let's see. So the blank should be able to tell me about a noun for which this pronoun it is. Okay. Conscientiousness surprisingly didn't play too much into effective leadership. Okay, so probably here they're talking about leadership. And it says that conscientiousness does not affect the leadership much. Now, what is conscientiousness? Being conscientious is being meticulous, scrupulous, sedulous, okay, being very, very thorough, extremely systematic, right? Hardworking, diligent. That is what this actually means. So, of course, whether one is an effective leader or not depends on the IQ of the group. So, there isn't exactly a perfect level of intelligence for a leader to have. Okay, all right. So finally, it says that there is no perfect level of intelligence. It's not that your IQ should be like 350, 400, something exceptionally high. Nothing like that. Because it also depends on the IQ or the intelligence of the group, right? Okay. So, which option should fit in? Let's see option A. Leadership ability is solely determined by one's level of conscientiousness. Would you accept this? Certainly not. Why not? Because here in the next sentence itself, it says that conscientiousness is not an important factor which affects leadership, right? And this is absolutely contrary to what the passage says. This is factually incorrect. So this cannot come here. Ultimately, effective leadership often hinges on interpersonal skills. Where does interpersonal skill come from? It's there. It's a part of the passage. Have a look at this. Good people skills. People skills. This is what interpersonal abilities. So it says that ultimately good leadership depends on interpersonal skills, right? Mostly it comes down to good people skills. This looks like a good option. I'll put a small tick mark. Let's have a look at C. Intelligence plays a minimal role in determining one's effectiveness as a leader. Now the point is, there are two reasons why we'll not go with option C. First of all, this says intelligence plays a minimal role in determining effectiveness as a leader. Just after that, what have we discussed? Good people skills. For a while, we talk about conscientiousness. And then at the end, we again talk about intelligence. So this part essentially is the conclusion of the passage. So how can it be in the beginning also? You've got to understand the continuity, right? It doesn't have to be choppy. When I'm done with saying something, then I don't have to unnecessarily repeat it over and over, right? So that's what you have to understand. And secondly, it does not say it plays a minimal role. That cannot be inferred from the text. Nowhere does the text say that it plays a minimal role. It says that you don't have to be exceptionally intelligent. But how important a factor is this? We don't really know. So why would we go for this? So this is also out of the game. The effectiveness of a leader is entirely contingent on the IQ of the group. Again, can you say this? This would be wrong. Again, the idea flow. We are mentioning about the IQ of the group somewhere in the middle, so it can't be in the first blank, right? And secondly, it's not saying anywhere that it is entirely contingent. So even this is out of the game. So the best answer is option B. Nice, fun. Yes, it is as simple as that, right? But certainly you need a lot of practice, right? So make sure that you have ample of practice on para jumbles and para completion. Okay, so we are done word usage. Idioms and phrases. So ample of idioms and phrases can come your way in this exam. What can be the good sources for idioms and phrases? So let me tell you that Wren and Martin has a good compilation of idioms and phrases. Even English is Easy has a nice compendium of that. Also, Arvind Sharma, if I'm not mistaken, has some of them. And then you can have ample of sources online, right? Okay. Let's have a look at this. Again, an idiomatic expression is used in a sentence, it's highlighted, you have to guess the meaning. That's it. To be a good orator, you don't have to play to the galleries. So let's try to understand what is the meaning of the expression playing to the gallery. Make a fool of yourself? No, doesn't make sense. Offend the audience, illogical. Appeal to the lower taste. Appease select audience. So I'm sure C and D are probably confusing options to you. They're really close options. But you have to understand when we say playing to the gallery, what does this actually mean? Playing to the gallery means that you are trying to, in a way, stoop down in terms of quality because you're trying to, in a way, appease people of a lower taste. You're just trying to appease them. You're playing to the gallery because gallery would have a lot of masses. The moment we say appease select audience, this does not capture the meaning of this idiom really well. Reason being that the select audience could be classes, the class, the elite people. But that's not the case. Whenever we say play to the gallery, it means that we are actually pandering to the demands of the common public by compromising with our level. So it should be appeal to the lower taste. C is the right answer. Next, to have an axe to grind. Now, sometimes it can be as challenging as this, where you don't have a sentence, so you don't really understand what should be the right thing to do. Okay? So in this scenario, to have an axe to grind, you can not guess it if you already don't know it. Fine. By the way, what does this mean? The answer is A. A private end to serve. When you have an axe to grind with someone, you are acting with some ulterior or selfish motive, right? You can say that, this person was being very vindictive towards me. Probably he has an axe to grind with me because of the past skirmish that we had. Okay, so somebody's acting revengeful just because they had a bad episode with you, and so they are trying to settle their scores and they have an axe to grind. Okay, so a private end to serve. Hope this is clear. And finally, we come to a passage. Okay, so we've come this far. This is the last thing that we're doing. So it would be great if you pause the video and read the passage. I'll be away from the screen for a while so that you can read the passage. And then I'll give you a quick summary of this, and then we will solve some questions, okay? The last thing. So I'm here away. A slight pause. Go through the passage. And this marks the end of the passage. Please pause the video. It's a recording. All right. You can even try the questions, but I would rather explain it first. Or okay, fine, I'll show you the questions also. Like, have a look at this. Keep pausing and solving. I want you to solve the questions. It doesn't make any sense if you're simply here listening to my explanation. Do it yourself. Pause the video and solve the question. Kindly share your answers in the comment box. It would be great if you participate. The last question. So it's time to discuss. Well, it was easy to moderate, right? And I think that if you mind map really well, every time that you read something, please make sure that paragraph wise, you just take a pause and you try to absorb the main idea of every paragraph. If you just do that, you will retain quite a bit. Remember, you don't have to memorize everything, but you have to understand, you have to comprehend. After you're done reading, you should have a clarity about what was the central idea of the passage. If you're good with that, you're good to go. Okay, fine. So let's try understanding this. I will summarize this passage for you. It says that most people agree that the golden age of comic books began with the introduction of Superman in 1938. There isn't much consensus about when exactly the golden age ended. right? So while everybody knows that with the onset of with the introduction of Superman, the golden age started, but there is less agreement on how it ended. But however, everybody agrees about the factors, right, that brought the decline of golden age. And what is that? The rise of, this is important, the rise of the horror comic book in the late 1940s and the backlash against the comic books in 1950s. So the introductory paragraph is about how the golden age ushered, right, with of course the introduction of Superman comics and how it ended. So it tells you that there is a very major factor that led to the decline of the golden age, and that happens to be what? Horror comic books, which were very popular in 1940s. And then there was a backlash against it. There was a huge criticism against it. Fine? Okay. So it tells you that, these superhero comic books, they were very popular. They were at their peak in the early 1940s because of the GIs. Who were they? They were the military troops. During the World War II, these were the soldiers and all that in Europe and Japan. So they were enthusiasts. They used to read a lot of Superman, Batman, and all these things. But when they came back home, they really wanted some gritty content. They wanted to read comic books, but those with some adult content. Okay. And so this gentleman, I should not be calling him gentleman, but this person, William Gaines of EC Comics, he took the opportunity, he sensed the market demand, and so he came up with some grim, some serious, dark themes and gritty titles. Okay. And those things, of course, had a lot of dark content. They were very violent. Fine. And this, somewhere or the other, right? This aroused the anger of child psychologist Frederick Wertham. So Frederick Wertham got really offended by this. When he noticed that the comic books are getting really dark and they're full of violence and they even have some adult content, some sexual content. So he did not like it, and he felt that they were actually harming the nation's youth and they were even leading them into violence and drug abuse. Right? So Werden's book, The Seduction of the Innocent, he wrote a book and this turned out to be a bestseller, right? And this highlighted how these comic books were very corrupting in nature. And what happened out of that, a regulatory body was in fact created, and they prohibited comic books from mentioning sexuality, alcohol, drugs, criminal behavior, etc. And these regulations had a bad effect or a numbing effect on the industry. And EC Comics was almost thrown out of the business. And this could not recover until the Marvel revolution of early 1960s ushered in the Silver Age. So when Marvel came, it was the ushering of Silver Age. The Silver Age started. Simple passage, right? We've understood. Let's move to the question. The first question. The central message of Frederick Wertham's The Seduction of the Innocent is. What is the central message? Let's have a look at the options. Comic books corrupted American youth as they lacked serious literary merit. No, this was not the reason. It's partially correct till here. But the reason was not that it lacked literary merit, because it had some adult content and some dark content, right, which had a debilitating effect on the youth. So this is out. Crime, violence, and drug abuse in the nation were introduced to nation's youth by comic books. This was not the claim. We can't say that it was introduced by this, right? This is nowhere mentioned. So this is slight distortion of what the passage says. So B is also out. The comic book industry must be censured to drive the worst offenders out of the business. All right, that might have been the intent, that might have been the purpose behind coming up with this entire agitation and all that. But then this was not the central message of his book. The central message was depicted in option B. Comic books were leading the nation's youth into crime, violence, and drug abuse. And D delta is obviously the right answer. This was a fairly easy one. I hope all of you got it right. Good. Next one. In what light does the passage depict the effort by Frederick Wortham to bring about regulation of the comic book industry. So you've got to understand the question stem also properly. Sometimes you don't understand that. Okay. So it says that how does the passage depict the effort by Frederick Wortham while he was trying to regulate the comic book industry? As a fanatical crusade brought about by Furtham's inner demons. Oh my God, this sounds too negative. The author nowhere has used such a negative language against Frederick Wortham. So this cannot be the right answer. What is fanatical crusade? When you're a fanatic, आप बहुत fundamentalist हो, बहुत staunch हो. Crusade is a kind of an attack, a very orchestrated and planned attack against someone. Demons are, you already know, devils, nothing like that. As a reasonable response to an industry that had gone too far. Okay, let's hold this for a while. As an angry response to a trend in the subject matter of the comic book industry. Angry response to a trend in the subject matter of the comic book industry. D says as an inappropriate response to a phenomenon. No, nowhere has he claimed that it is an inappropriate response. So this is out. We can say it's an angry response. है ना? Why? Because he was upset with the subject matter of the comic book industry. It would be safe to choose C. Why not B? Because B says reasonable response. Please understand that the author has been very neutral through and through. He has nowhere supported anybody. He is very objectively telling you about the rise and decline of the golden age of the comic industry. He's not expressing his personal opinion, and he has not even said that whatever he did, whatever Frederick Wortham did, was justified or was not justified. Nothing like that has been mentioned. So of course we would not go with B, and we will choose C instead, right? Which of the following statements can be made about the content of Weird Tales on the Crypt of Terror? Okay, their grim and gritty content was a market response to the demands of soldiers home from World War II. Looks really good. I'll put a small tick. Grim and gritty hai. Right, gritty is too bold and grim is serious because it had a lot of violence. They frequently depicted violence and criminal behavior but shied away from sexuality. Ji nahi, it had a lot of sexuality as well. So this is only partially correct and the other half is factually wrong. So this is out of the game. Their sales surpassed those of previous best-selling titles such as Superman or Batman. This is completely out of scope. Nowhere in the passage do we find this. So this is also out. The publication of Weird Tales 1 coincided with the end of golden age of comic books. Again, nothing like that. We don't know the exact timing and stuff. Out of scope again. Clear hai is the right answer. Very easy question. A very scoring one. According to the passage, which of the following is true? So what is right as per the passage? Let's have a look. A says the creators of superhero comic books in the post-war years responded to the competitive pressure from horror comic books by increasing the amount of violence in their stories. Yes, they did. Fine. When they sensed that there was a demand of this, so all of them started including such adult content and dark content in their comics, right? Okay. The creators of superhero comic books in the post-war years voluntarily prohibited stories dealing with sexuality, drugs. No, they were not prohibiting. They were in fact promoting it, right? And they were minting money out of it. So B is out. The creators of superhero comic books in the post-war years unintentionally laid the groundwork for the transition from the golden age of comic books to the silver age. This might come a little close that they unintentionally laid the foundation. But again, as I can say that, well, there were so many factors. In the beginning itself, they said this was one of the factors. So many factors might have led to the transition. And it's also about starting of the silver age. So this had no bearing on the starting of the silver age. This event might have had a bearing on the ending of golden age. So keeping that in mind, let's not go ahead with C because A looks already good to us. Option D, the creators of superhero comic books in the post-war years focused increasingly on well-developed stories. No, not really. Flashy artwork, no, that's not factually right. It's not supported by the passage. So again, this is out. Wow, our answer is A. And finally, the last question, right? All your patience is going to pay you back. Don't you worry. The passage is primarily aiming at which of the following? What does the passage aim at? Criticizing adult readers of comic books for their corrupting influence on the nation's youth. Well, let's be very observant of this fact that the passage is written in a very objective style. The author has not criticized anybody, has not actually censured anybody, is very objectively just telling you about a series of events, right? So we can't say that it was written to criticize anybody. No. Comparing and contrasting golden age of comic books with silver age of comic books, no, there is no comparison, no one-on-one comparison and contrasting taking place. Criticizing comic books for their corrupting influence on the nation's youth as well as adults. Again, I say there is no criticism. Discussing how the end of the golden age of comic books was brought in. Oh, just the perfect one. That's what is happening. That how exactly golden age ended, right? So that was all. Students, I really hope that you will benefit a lot from this session, provided that you watch it from the beginning to the end. And I'll be back again with more content. Please like, share, and subscribe, and follow my tips. And with all the optimism that you have, right, study well, practice a lot. And that's all for today. I'm signing off. Thank you so much.